Today is Jackie Robinson Day in Major League Baseball, and it was 77 years ago today, April 15th, 1947, that Jackie made his MLB debut for the Brooklyn Dodgers, making him the first black player in the majors. Last year on this day, I celebrated Larry Doby. Today, I will do something similar. This show is about the Brooklyn pitcher who was tapped to be on the mound for that historic MLB opening day and whose win was greatly overshadowed by Jackie's appearance, which the whole country was waiting for, especially every black man and boy who was hoping one day to at least have the opportunity and perhaps get the chance to play Major League Baseball. The cheers for Jackie on this day from the proud Americans were a lot louder than the Dodgers pitcher's 10 brothers and sisters who were just as proud of their brother as Jackie Robinson's fans were of Jackie. In 2020, the town of Bancroft, Iowa had 682 people, so you can imagine how many families there were back in 1947. Probably not many, but I'm sure there were cheering on their hometown hero, with some of the loudest cheers coming out of Bancroft were from the family and friends of Joseph Hilarion Hatten, nicknamed Joe, lefty or crooked arm, pitcher, lefty, MLB debut 1946. Joe was born 1916, the fourth of 11 kids, played American Legion ball as a youth, and signed his first contract in 1938 with the Sioux City Cowboys, Nebraska State League. He got into his first pro game the next season with the Crookston, Minnesota, Class D. And in his first full pro season, he led the team in wins and that league in strikeouts with 299, including 21 in one game. Joe played for the Dodgers Class B team in 1940, moved all the way up to AAA in 1941, pitching for the unaffiliated Minneapolis Millers of the American Association. Dodger scout Andy Cohen had been keeping an eye on Joe Hatten, and Brooklyn acquired the 6-foot southpaw from the Millers after that season. Joe started 1942 with the Montreal Royals, the Dodgers' top farm team in the International League, going 4-2 with that club before being called into service with the Navy. Joe said, "The Dodgers bought my contract, but it was going to be a long time before I could pitch for them." Joe Hatten was in the Navy for 41 months, 10 of those overseas in the Pacific. When he got back in the States, he was stationed at the Naval Air Base in Livermore, California. During his time serving in the Navy, his pitching record was 85-25, at one point winning 21 out of 22 games and pitched 44 innings of scoreless ball. When he was discharged from the military in October 1945, Joe was quick to play some California winter ball. And before the start of the 1946 spring training camp, Dodgers president Branch Rickey offered Joe $450 a month to pitch for Brooklyn. Joe Hatten was 29 years old and balked at the offer, and instead was a holdout. Branch Rickey said, "I'll be glad to pay him what he will be worth if he proves himself." Eventually, another offer was made that Joe accepted. Brooklyn manager Leo DeRocha was impressed the first time he saw Joe pitch, as was Casey Stengel and Chuck Dressen. Leo said, "No doubt about it. This Hatten looks like a real pitcher. He pours that thing by you, and he isn't half trying yet. He ought to be something when he's ready to cut loose. All you have to do is look at him, and you know that if he can control it, he can be the best southpaw the Dodgers ever had." They would all say the same thing to that effect about the southpaw. Joe Hatten makes his big league pitching debut April 21st, 1946 for the Brooklyn Dodgers at Ebbets Field, and he would beat the New York Giants on that day. Now we go to the next to the last day of the 1946 season. Joe Hatten will pitch Brooklyn to a win over the Boston Braves, making it 6 straight wins for Joe and 14 for the season. This meant the 1946 pennant race would come down to a best-of-3 playoff between the Dodgers and the Cardinals. This 3-game series was the first ever playoff in Major League Baseball history. The Dodgers would lose Game 1. Joe Hatten was picked to start Game 2, but would get knocked out in the 5th inning, with the Cardinals winning that game, giving them the pennant. The Dodgers would take the pennant the following year and again in 1949. Joe Hatten appeared in 6 World Series games as a member of the Brooklyn Dodgers, all against the Yankees. He started Game 3 of the 1947 World Series at Ebbets Field. Dodgers were up 6-0 after 2 innings, but he was driven out of that game in the fifth after giving up a 2-run homer to Joe DiMaggio. Brooklyn won a close game, but the victory was given to reliever Hugh Casey. Joe Hatten's 5 other World Series appearances were as a reliever, and none very memorable, unless you were the one playing in those games. His best season was 1947, making 32 starts with 11 complete games, going 17-8, but allowing the second most base on balls in the league, walking 110 batters, and hitting quite a few. Except for the wins, 1946 was the same. Lots of walks and guys being told to take their base after being hit by a pitch. Then, that September, he did something highly unusual. Joe Hatten won both games of a doubleheader and then won 3 games in a 6-game span. Pretty remarkable. What is also remarkable is a pitcher with control problems could play pro ball for 20 seasons. He did, because Joe had what's called a rubber arm, working as a starter or as a reliever and sometimes working both ends of a doubleheader. He just couldn't get any real control of his arm and would have more walks than strikeouts every season he pitched in the bigs. During his time with Brooklyn Dodgers, 1946 to June 1951, Joe Hatten's pitching record was 59-39. That June, in what was called a blockbuster trade involving 8 players, Joe was traded to the Cubs for Andy Pafko and would play for the Cubs through July of 1952, then would spend the rest of his career pitching Triple-A ball before finally retiring in 1960 at the age of 43. Overall, Joe Hatten pitched in 233 big league games, compiling a record of 65-49. Both of these Joe Hatten autographs my dad has are when he was an LA Angel. After his time in the majors, Joe spent 9 seasons in AAA, where his record was 93-87 during those years. After 20 years of delivering pitches, Joe would spend the next 20 delivering U.S. mail while waiting for a phone call to be a coach. That call never came. He would, however, coach American Legion ball and would attend clinics with other former big leaguers, showing youngsters how to throw his trademark curveball, which Joe had become known for. His hometown renamed the street leading to Bancroft Memorial Park, the town's baseball diamond. That street is now called Joe Hatten Drive. I'm always looking for a good ending in my shows, whether it's a personal story about a player's youth or something he did after his playing career was over. But the best is when I can end the show about what the man did as a player on the baseball diamond, since this is a sports show. Some guys give me a lot to work with, even though they weren't exceptional players. But they saw and played with some great players, and that's where the good stories come from. In the case of Joe Hatten, lefty pitcher, aka Crooked Arm, I could end his show a couple of ways. I'm going to do it like this. In 1948, he threw 51 pitches in a 5-inning complete game shutout against the Cincinnati Reds, the fewest pitches for a complete game in MLB history, and still is. That's a good ending to your story right there. Getting yourself in the MLB record book and staying there for the past 75 years. And it's even nicer when that story involves you pitching 20 years of pro ball, 7 of them in the majors. You had a winning record in every level of ball and pitched in 6 World Series. And even if those World Series showings were not the greatest, you can also say that you were on the mound for the most historic day in Major League Baseball history. The day your teammate Jackie Robinson took the field. On this day, 77 years ago,